When Judge Sheindlin declared New York's Stop and Frisk program unconstitutional last week, she also ordered New York City to outfit some of its police officers with body cameras. The idea is to help police the police, but how would that actually work? Turns out Rialto, California introduced the use of body cameras in February of 2012, and since then, the number of complaints filed against officers has fallen 88% compared with complaints from the previous year. Use of force by officers fell by almost 60% over the same period. Rialto, California is so pleased with the program that starting in September, all of their uniformed officers will start wearing a camera during every shift. It's about $900, according to the story in the Times today. There's, I think, something like 35,000 NYPD cops. So you're looking at about $30 million, a little bit more than $30 million, to put cameras on every cop. My question is, we got dash cams in police cars. You get cops who behave better. You get suspects who you can catch throwing stuff out the window. Where's the harm in doing this, or at least trying this?
Yeah, I went into it thinking, you know, this is a bad idea. People shouldn't be on camera all the time. Read up on it. Bill Bratton is a guy that's respected. New York City and L.A. police commissioner. He's for it. Ray Kelly seems to be against it. But I think that's the fact that you can have a reasonable debate about it says this should be done legislatively. Let's have hearings in the city council. Let's talk about it. Let's interview expert witnesses, not a judge at the federal level saying you must do this. That is not a due diligence. We should do due diligence on this, figure out if it would work, pilot it, not do it by judicial fiat the way we're doing it.
Do you think your Republican colleagues in the Assembly and the Republican majority, or sort of majority in the Senate, would go for it?
I think a pilot program, because you don't want to spend $30 million when you could have spent, you know, a couple $100,000 to find out it's not going to work. But I'd like to see it piloted and tested out. Sure.
In addition, I think this is, I'm a civil rights attorney, and part of what I do is sue police officers, or kind of police to police, for false arrests or malicious prosecution. And what I find when I'm deposing police officers is that some of them don't have training, weren't properly trained, not retrained, and so it's one of the reasons that they're being sued, because of the lack of training and not having retraining. So I think the cameras would be excellent tools, perhaps in the pilot program, but they're excellent tools in helping properly trained police officers, because you can see what the interaction of, do you think this person had reasonable suspicion? Does the officer have probable cause to make an arrest? How about the treatment of the assailant or the potential suspect? You can teach all around them. So I think it will be an excellent tool to help police officers better police.
You know, Andrew, what I'm thinking about, I recall when the police commissioner, Ray Kelly, brought me in to speak at the Apollo Theater to 1,100 brand new police officers. And while I'm speaking with the commissioner in the front row and the chief of department, 3 or 4 cops were actually asleep during my presentation with the police commissioner in attendance. So now, we don't want to assume, but isn't it a safe assumption that those might be the types of cops that have a problem and with the community? And wouldn't it be a good idea if, yeah, they have to uphold the law, but if we had a camera to actually see what happened during that encounter with that 16-year-old kid that had his hat to the back and he can't really articulate the way that a police officer can. Not to say the police officer did something wrong, but wouldn't it be a good idea that we had an objective, completely objective use to see what happened? I think it's a great idea.
That's a good point also, because what the city, when you sue the city of New York for a police officer's actions, since they're employees of the city can decide whether or not they want to defend the police officer. We've seen some situations with Louis, I believe it was, where they stuck a broom, you know, in his anal cavity, right? But where they said, we're not going to defend you because you didn't learn that in our training. These cameras will help the city also weed out who are the bad police officers, because at the end of the day, you're like, we didn't train you to do that. You were on your own, and we're not responsible for you. So it adds accountability to the police department also.
You know, the other thing is you get all of these surveillance cameras that are all over the city anyway, particularly in Manhattan. Why not put up a couple of surveillance cameras for the areas where you're conducting the stop and frisk too? That way you're covered either way. I mean, we're talking about lawsuits and potentially more lawsuits against cops in the last segment. Wouldn't this be a defense mechanism for them, as you were describing? The more cameras, the better.
No, exactly. I mean, well, we're already being watched now. Well, somebody can take out their phone. I mean, you have to operate under the assumption that you are being watched. But some officers know they're not being watched. But if you're on camera all the time, then certainly I think that helps the accountability.
The only downside I can see to this, and this is what Bloomberg has sort of pointed to, if an officer knows that he's being taped And this is what cops will tell you every time when you talk to them. Man, you can talk all that crap on television. I want to make it home to see my family tonight. This is the one constant denominator they will say. So if a police officer has to hesitate for a second before firing, and that hesitation makes him or her lose their life, then I can see why they would say it's not a good idea for the cameras.
Well, we're going to see how this debate plays out. It'll be interesting to see what kind of opposition to the judge's ruling on this we get as we go forward. More RFLs after a quick break. Stay with us.